Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, and good night, fight fans. Sunday Straight Talk is in session. I'm your co host, Jason from Jay's Fight Talk. As always, my right hand man, stat man, good friend, host of No Punches Pulled, Liam's Fight Night Picks over on LTs Sweet Boxing Science. Stat man Liam Tully, how are we this Sunday afternoon, brother?
I'm all good, brother. I'm all good. We were just saying off camera, it's been, well, it feels like a long time since we've had a weekend of fights that have actually been worth getting our teeth sunk into. And for us as both boxing and lovers of MMA, we had two fantastic cards, didn't we, that gave us talking points maybe in different ways, as I'm sure we're going to get into over the next hour or so.
They delivered. They delivered for me. I mean, we missed you on the streams last night for a couple of reasons, but for me, it doesn't matter what card it is. I've always felt a sense of sort of underwhelmed usually by the end of a card with a massive build up. We'll get on to the UFC. Some of that was a little bit lackluster, but the boxing last night, yes, there was a couple of fights that the results potential. I mean, we'll talk about scorecards and things like that, but the pacing of the card wasn't too bad. It sort of flowed, and there were no questions that remained unanswered after last night for me. But we'll start. We'll start at the start, really. Mohamed Alakel defeats Yunam Santos first round KO. I mean, it is what it is. He's touted as a decent prospect. I think it's more to do with who he is, what he is, and where he's from. But at the risk of being called a racist, I'll say it was a great performance from a hot prospect. I mean, what's your take on the one round blowout we saw last night from Mr. Alakel?
God, mate, I'm done what he needed to do. Look, if there's one criticism of Alakel is that he's decided to coast through his 4 rounders and maybe not put his foot on the gas. I mean, one thing you can't say last night is he started hot, he got an opponent hurt, and he went for the stoppage. That's what, when we're at this level, and we're going to come on to what we expect to see when we talk about Moses shortly. When you're at this level, there's only so much you can do. And the one criticism we've had, because I think we spoke about it the last time you opened up one of these cards, was
Good evening, Jams, over at Red
Jams.
Corner Boxing. Subscribe if you haven't already. We'll come on to that in a bit, Jams.
Was that he looked good, but we want to see him maybe start getting stoppages. Well, he got his opponents hurt within about 45 seconds last night and then got a finish. We can't complain. Look, it's always a way to start a night. We know that he is working with Joe Gallagher out in the gym.
Mr. Neutral.
Out in the gym out there that Joe has in Saudi, and Turkey wants to put him on these shows. But as we're going to come on to with other things on this card, can we see him progress now? I know there isn't the domestic depth there in Saudi, but Turkey can get anyone to any place, realistically. We've seen it, haven't we, enough over the last 18, 20 months or so. So let's see what's to come next. I'm excited by him, but I'm going to keep my lid on the emotions until I see him in with someone live that's actually going to ask questions.
Yeah, and I'll just come on to something there. I'm going to break from the norm. I'm sick of Turkey, to be honest, because, yes, he gets some of the fights made that would take a lot longer to be made because of money, but he also makes fights based on what he wants to see rather than who's deserving of those fights, who's grafted their way up to the top. So there's people that are getting overlooked for fights and matchups that are not being discussed because Uncle Turkey's not interested. The big wet fish slap in the face last night for me is he screamed about this card, didn't even fucking turn up, wasn't even there. So don't tell me about you love boxing and it's on your doorstep. Evening, DJ Pat, hope you're well, brother. So for me, that proves that he's not so much of a boxing guy as he makes out, because, if I can be asked to sit on my couch and pay 20 quid for it, the guy that's in charge, the guy that pays, that signs the checks, the guy that plays matchmaker, that's front and centre for it all, in all the build-up and wants all the plaudits and backpats when it goes well, wasn't there last night. And that shows me that he had more important things, more pressing matters. Now, yes, he could have had an issue within his personal life. It could have been an emergency. We'd have known about that if that were the case. He just didn't want to be there. He was in New York in the week, so he's probably stayed over. And if he loves Moses Atauma so much and he's touting him to be the second coming of Muhammad Ali, then surely he would have been ringside. I mean, Eddie Hearn were ringside, for God's sake. And he had one fighter Ray Ford, I believe,
Yeah.
was his only interest in that card. You wouldn't have known that from fight week. He was front and center at face-offs for White and Atama, and and doing what you need to do as a promoter. And whether Turkey's got his promoter's license or not, he's a boxing promoter. He's promoting. He's putting on these shows. He's the guy that signs the checks. So the fact that he wasn't there was a massive disappointment for me. Alakel, I'd like to see him in a fight now. Somebody in the top 20 maybe of his division, and not just being fed gimmies on home cards, so to speak. But look, it is what it is. I'm not gonna keep with the running of the card because I want to get this over and done with. Kas Ashfaq got battered.
We said it in the week, mate, didn't we?
Stopped in 3 rounds. I don't even know why he was in there. Satsumi just dealt with him. Just dealt with him. There were levels. I know we say that there's levels to this, and we use that analogy in life, in work, and certainly in fight sports. And last night was a prime example of there being levels to this. Kas Ashfaq was in that fight until the first bell rang. And then Satsumi just beat him up. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Kas Ashfaq I've known for a long time. He's from Leeds. I'm from Bradford. So I've seen him come up through the ranks. Highly touted amateur. Turned over with great expectations. But within a year, Matchroom had dropped him. And unfortunately, he's just fallen off and then gets brought in. For last night, but he's not even getting brought in as a name, really, because nobody really knows who Kas is, and that's a shame. Nobody outside of boxing, the mainstream, the casuals, don't know who he is, and that could be really detrimental to his career last night, just getting beaten up like that by not a novice, but somebody who's not really at that elite level yet. He's on his way up there, but to just get brought in to get beaten up is, disappointing for me. We've got a question here from Jams on that fight. Where you guys put Satsumi among top boxers? I don't yet. He's floating around top 15, top 20 for me. I don't know about you, Liam.
Is Jams, sorry, Mr. Neutral, just exactly what I was about to say. Look, Satsumi done what he should have done last night against an overmatched opponent, and he got it done quickly. In terms of what I want to see next, well, let's see him in with someone that's in the top 5 with the governing bodies, and then we'll answer that question. Ashfaq didn't make sense as an opponent last night. Me and you said it when we had a chat during the week, and we also said it when the fight was announced. Out of all the fights announced on this card, even Herkovic Adelaide, which was a strange one to be announced, Ashfaq getting brought in as this opponent just didn't make any sense. Satsumi done what we expected him to do. Again, let's see what comes next for him. I want to see a bigger test and maybe someone that's going to ask questions, because although he looks impressive so far, we haven't really seen any questions be asked of him, have we?
No, he's not had to have a real fight really yet, so we can all look slick. I mean, I look like Mayweather on pads, but put somebody in front of me throwing punches back at me, and that slowly dissipates into the ether, and I curl up and scream for help. So yeah, he needs a fight. He needs a real fight, and I'm excited to see how far he can go, because he looks the part. But he looks the part. No disrespect to Kas Ashfaq, I'm not saying he's a punch bag, but he looks good when people are stood in front of him, letting him get his shots off. And I'll come on to somebody else that, in fact, it's the next one, Mr. Raymond Ford against Abraham Nova. Now, for me, and Sam mentioned that he thought Nova boxed well, and I think he did in spits and spurts, but I think Ray Ford allowed him to get into that fight by doing 3-4 punch combinations and then admiring his work and just standing straight in front of him, giving Nova an opportunity then to throw back. And he took way too many shots for me last night. I don't see Ford doing anything at the top level if he continues to do the things that he was doing last night. He was making mistake after mistake after mistake and allowing Nova to come back. I think if Nova hit harder, we might have seen Ford in trouble in parts of that fight last night. What's your take on the unanimous points decision victory for Ray Ford last night?
Yeah. So look, I'll caveat everything we speak about now with I knew the results before watching the fights. I was stuck at work, so I knew everything that was going on and then watched it all back this morning when I got up. Ford I expected more because of what we've seen Ray Ford can do. But if you look back earlier in the week, I said I thought this might be a tough night for Ray Ford. I just had a feeling because it's not the guy it was meant to be, because there wasn't a world title of sorts on the line. I just didn't think we were going to see the best of Ray Ford. And yes, he done enough to win. I think I had it 6-4, 7-3, maybe, if I'm being generous to Ray Ford. It was a lot closer than I expected it to be. But I also felt he never really got out of third gear. You were waiting for Ray Ford as the rounds went on to kind of show the levels for it, if that makes sense. I just didn't see it coming at any point. I always expect more from Ray Ford. We very rarely see more unless he absolutely needs to show it. And Nova, who we all sort of criticised as being a replacement opponent for Kakachi, has more than shown his worth as well. He impressed me. He did have Ford in trouble a couple of times. And like you say, if he stepped on the gas a bit more and maybe let his hands go, we would have seen some questions answered against Ray Ford that we haven't seen since the Nick Ball fight, as Neutral saying here. I'm underwhelmed again by Ray Ford. I really like him as a fighter, but it's getting very difficult to like him without him then showing gears and showing levels and moving on.
I get a sense of the Adrian Broners about him, and I'll explain why. I don't mean he's an arsehole that sells weed. I don't mean that he's got 10 kids and he's disrespectful to women and he's racist and he's misogynistic. I don't mean that. I just mean there's an arrogance in his behaviour inside the ropes. He admires his own work. He likes to showboat a little bit too much. He had Tom and Jerry on his shorts last night and then didn't do what, if he'd have stopped Nova, that would have resonated better with the fans and the management. But to have that on your shorts, and then that fight was pretty close for me. There was maybe rounds, there were swing rounds, and Ford won. And I'm not going to say that it was a robbery and he shouldn't have won, but he made that fight closer than it was. And I'll go back to the Mayweather, the Broner analogy. I remember when Broner was coming through and I touted him to fight Mayweather. I said they will have a fallout and that's the fight they're going to make between them. And their tracks were on course. And then it got to Paulie Malignaggi, and that's when Broner changed. He started being more of a prick and doing more things outside the ring that then affected him inside the ring. And then he'd do this showboating, playing to the crowd. And then he would get caught by punches that he shouldn't be getting caught for. And his career's just fallen off a cliff. I think he's now calling for the Disney Kid and talking about selling, vegetables and things like that. And I've always called him average boxer, and he's not. He was world-class 4-weight world champion, but believed his own hype and didn't train properly. And this is why Adrian Broner now is skint, looking for work. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Ray Ford. I just mean that I see similarities in his behaviour inside the ropes, not outside the ropes. Totally different personality. Ray Ford's pretty reserved outside the ropes. So if you're going to do that kind of shit inside, then don't stand there for 10 seconds admiring your work and then getting clocked back when you have the skill set. He could have just 10-0'd Nova last night, I believe. If they fought again, Ford would box differently, and I'm not saying he'd stop him, but he'd at least 10-0 him. He gave away rounds last night unnecessarily for me. I don't want to see... Before the fight, I was excited to see him and Ball, but I believe that Ford's better at super feather and Ball needs to stay where he is at feather and do what he's got left to do there, because we'll come on to that shortly, but I have a lot of negative things to say about the Nick Ball performance, but we'll come on to that next. In terms of Ray Ford, it's got to be Kakachi. That was the fight that they were going to make. I think Kakachi said something like, basically said he's shit, and it's easy work or something like that. I haven't really had time to spend much time on the internet, but I think it's Kakachi. I think we see him versus Kakachi either back quarter of this year or first quarter of next year. What do you think's next for Mr. Ford?
Has to be Kakachi. So just to go off his comment was, Ray Ford, a typical American fighter, can talk the talk, but the guy has no engine. If pushed, he will fold. That's Kakachi's assessment straight after the fight last night. Then put a hashtag easy money. So there you go. Look, I think I actually went on record as saying I thought Ford would make it look relatively comfortable against Kakachi. I stick by. I think Ray Ford beats Anto Kakachi, but I will say this: Ray Ford needs to turn up in a
There
way
he
that he did
is.
last night.
Will you answer your bloody phone? Sorry. Yes, brother.
I
I'll ring you
think
later.
I think Ford beats Kakachi because he'll turn up because he'll know it's more of a high risk fight. Last night, I don't think Ford was expecting to be in any sort of danger, was expected to be in any sort of trouble, and as such, boxed accordingly. Now, that's not making an excuse. That's just being honest. I expected more from Ray Ford. You went for an early stoppage when we done our picks. I said I hoped we get a late stoppage, but they could have boxed for the entirety of that DAZN broadcast last night, and I don't think we would have seen Ray Ford get a stoppage. He was just in there to get the job done without taking any risks or looking to make any real statement, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was safety first for me, and I get that you've got to be careful, but I think he had an opportunity last night to make a real statement, and he didn't. Absolutely no apology needed. The Hand History Vault, we appreciate you joining us. Thanks for joining us as always, my brother or sister, or them, or they, or I don't want to offend you. I don't know what you identify as. Right, this fight for me was my favourite fight of the night. David Adelaide against Filip Hrgović. Hand History Vault, do you think I'm going to duck and hide? I said I picked Dillian Whyte on heart. If you'd have watched the live last night, you would have heard me say that I don't believe that was what was really going to happen. And I think me and Sam had both said that it could potentially end in the first round. I'd said on the ring walk that Dillian Whyte didn't look right. We're going to get onto that in a minute. He was shaking everybody's hands prior to, which is nonsense. He's never done that before. And I said to Sam, it felt a bit Tasha Jonas before the prize fight. He was taking it in, saying goodbye, and he knew that he'd just turned up for a payday. But it is what it is. I picked him, humble pie. I've eaten big slices of it before. I have slices ready in the freezer to defrost on a weekly basis. I think I got every pick wrong last night. I think Sam got every pick right. But, it is what it is. David Adelaide, man, he's not that good. He's not that good, but he's really tough. Adam Booth has tweaked his style. And last night, I believe if he'd have had better cardio, not better cardio, if he had have managed his cardio better after round 2, he could have got Filip Hrgović out of there last night because Filip could not get him out of there. I know he knocked him down, but it's a heavy knockdown. He got back up and then won the majority of that round thereafter. And I think it was round 8. He had Hrgović hanging on for dear life, but didn't have any cardio. At one point, I think Adelaide bent over to get his breath. He just couldn't stand upright. But was an old school, knock'em sock'em robots boxing match. It was exciting. It had a bit of everything, and I think Adelaide's stock's gone up. But I don't know where Hrgović goes from here. What's your take on Hrgović Adelaide, Liam?
So this was the first fight I went back and watched because everything I seen on social media, everything I heard from you boys was that this was a fight that delivered in a way we weren't expecting. And I have to admit, David Adelaide impressed me last night. Yes, he lost, and if we're being honest, he lost wide on the scorecards because for the reasons you said, and he didn't have a go enough. He was quite happy staying on the back foot, wasn't he? Where if you just put a bit of forward pressure on a bit more in the fight, similar to what Dubois done once Dubois got Hrgović cut when they fought a couple of years ago, we may have seen a different outcome. Hrgović is what he is, isn't he? He's a tough son of a bitch who has an incredibly hard chin that doesn't get dropped, that seems to be able to take punches no matter how hard they are, no matter how deep into a fight he is. And he always seems to find a way. Look, Filip Hrgović will argue that he's had tougher tests. And I would probably agree with that. Because on the whole, David Adelaide didn't really test Filip Hrgović. He had his moments, but he didn't put together a 30-minute performance that troubled the Croatian, did he? Look, Hrgović doesn't change in his stock. He beat past his best Joe Joyce at the start of the year, and now he's gone and beaten a domestic-level British fighter that he was expected to beat. So he's not done anything this year that none of us didn't expect him to do. All three of us The two of us and Sam predicted him to beat Joe Joyce at the start of the year, and all three of us said he'd win last night. So he's not done anything out of the blue. I just always, with Hrgovic, I'm left wanting more. We know he can hit hard because he dropped Adelaide last night, and we've seen him, we've seen him have Dubois in trouble. We've seen him stop Dempsey McKean in the 12th round. So we know he has a gas tank to go deep into fights.
Yeah.
He doesn't show it. There's 3 punch combinations, but 2 of them are tapping jabs, and then you might get a cuffing overhand off the back of it rather than always looking to make a dent. Adelaide, has his stock gone up after, from where it was after not taking the TKV rematch? Absolutely. But I will ask a question. Who does he fight next, Adelaide? Because he's not... TKV in Clark is happening on September 27th on the first BBC Boxer card. We're led to be believed. The Border Control has confirmed it on Thursday, Friday. Dave Allen's taken up with Matt Rudolph.
Joe Joyce.
But what does he gain from fighting Joe Joyce? If he beats Joe Joyce, it just goes
name on his record, isn't it?
It's on his record, but it just goes on like Hrgovic, like Chisora this time last year. Of he's beaten Joe Joyce, but Joe isn't the same as he was 2-3 years ago. It's a difficult place he's in. Look, the Adam Booth effect. We said, haven't we? Some fighters need more than one training camp to adapt to a new style. That was Adelaide's second training camp with Adam Booth, and he was a step further on than he was from the TKV fight. Fundamentally, still horrendous. He's never going to be a boxing fundamentalist that can box off with a jab, that can use footwork. His power is always there to bail him out, but he could be a problem. Look, if he can learn to use his size better, as we speak about all the time with these big heavyweights, there's no reason why Adelaide couldn't be a problem for guys in the top 15. He probably loses more of those fights than he wins, but it's definitely becoming a style that I think exacerbates his power more, so shows it off better, and also hides some of his faults because he doesn't allow himself to have to box on the outside. He likes to come in closer, doesn't he? Which hides away from his poor footwork and the fact that he's questionable when he's taking punching combinations.
Yeah, I don't think the Adam Booth jabbing from the hip style suits him. I think Adelaide would be better stood upright, jabbing from here. Jabbing from there, he's not fast enough. David A, Josh Kelly, Ryan Burnett, those type fighters have explosiveness, but they also have fast twitch. Adelaide's not got that. So the change in his style, I think, doesn't really benefit him. I can't stand this, you shit, that didn't hurt nonsense. He concentrates that much on proving how tough he is.
Yeah.
By making out he's not hurt, that he just leaves himself wide open. Look, he surprised me. I thought he were going to get blasted out there. Sorry, what were you going to say, Liam?
Just on that, proving he's not hurt. When he got knocked down last night, I'm sure you and Sam might have picked up on it last night. Why is he sticking his tongue out to Abel Sanchez in Hrgovic's corner? What's similar to when he, blood all over his tongue on his back against Fabio Wardley, and he was doing that then. There's no need to do that. Yes, it's good to prove you're not hurt, but do that by actually doing what he done when he stood up, by hurting Hrgovic, by staying in the fight.
Why would they make that match again?
We don't need to see that again.
Hand history, it wasn't close the first time. I can't see it being any closer the second time, or have you missed that one? In fact, that was the first time I saw Adelaide. He told Wardley he was shit while he was on his back.
Yeah, with his tongue sticking out, blood all over him. Yeah,
tongue kicking out, saying you shit after he'd just been pretty much knocked out. Yeah, I've seen Pulev and Hunters being made by dodgy
Adelaide. Dom. Yeah, Adelaide will struggle with a quick heavyweight. Filip Hrgovic is not a quick heavyweight. That's just slow. Facts. He's very robotic. You can almost read what he's going to do, and then 20 minutes later it happens. When you put Adelaide in there with someone with a bit of speed, with someone that's got movement, that's where he'll struggle.
What about Adelaide versus Hune for Hune's comeback fight?
That's a good fight.
Sell over here, and they're both coming off losses. They're both high profile for each other's career. You could have that at the Copper Box or somewhere like that, maybe. Or even take Adelaide over there. It's a big fight. It's a decent fight. Yeah, I think someone like that. But Wardley now is being... let me just look at this one. What's this one here? There were rumours of Pulev. Wardley is now being iced out. No big fights. I don't think he's been iced out. I think, look, he's just had his biggest performance at home. I think he's just become a father as well, as I'm led to believe. I think I think he's enjoying the fruits of his labour. He's active, he's training, but I think he's waiting for the right fight at the right time. I don't think it's a case of him being sort of blackballed or iced out. I think he's just waiting for the right fight. Possibly. I don't know that. That's just me guessing, mate.
The plan with Fabio, and he said it all fight week leading up to Hooney, he said, win or lose this fight, you won't see me until November, December time because of the fact you're becoming a dad, different thing. Look, you can't, just because Pulev and Hunter's been made by Don King doesn't mean we're actually going to get to see the fight. So, that, you know, there is a way that we still get Pulev against Wardley before the end of this year, potentially. We don't need to see Adelaide again. Adelaide now needs to make sure he's ringside at Clark and TKV and make as much noise as possible to get the winner.
Yeah.
Have I dropped out?
Ooh. Yeah. No, you're there. Oh, yeah, you're back. Well, you know,
I'm there. That's what he needs to do.
Yeah, and I look forward to that. Right then, Nick Ball. I am very disappointed with that performance from Nick Ball last night. He looked predictable. He looked very static. He looked gassed at parts in that fight. But I'm also very, 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 very impressed with Sam Goodman. And to say that was his first fight up at featherweight was a great performance. We were dismissing it previously, saying it's about time Ball fought somebody his own weight. Goodman looked like he was a natural featherweight. He boxed really well. I think his first round was his worst round for me because I said he's not using his attributes, which is length and range. And then after the second round, he started using them. And I'd actually picked Goodman just on the off chance by stoppage, and I also picked the draw. Mm-hmm. When we got to round 11, I had Nick Ball 1 round in front, and I gave Goodman the last round. Then we got the scorecards. I actually turned it off after the first scorecard was read out of 117, 111. I turned it off. Then to be told that we had a 118, 110, and then the next one, 115, 113, which I would have accepted. Either man could have won that fight 7-5 for me because it's subjective, what do you score and what don't you score? But that wasn't a 117, 111, 118, 110 fight for me. I saw things in that fight that concerned me for Nick Ball. But I was also very, very, very impressed by Mr. Goodman. What's your thoughts now you've had time to watch and digest it, Liam?
Firstly, scorecards 117, 111, 118, 110 are howlers. They are up there with some of the worst we've seen this year. And for a change, we don't have to talk about British officials because there was no British officials last night. We'll come on to why that might have been in a minute, but we can't be bashing British officials for a change. I was the same as you. I scored it 115, 113 to Nick Ball, but was very underwhelmed. Look, let's give Sam Goodman his flowers because he was meant to be the next, fighter moving up to take on Nick Ball that wasn't going to be able to last the course, that wasn't going to be able to ask questions. And he more than asked questions last night. And my main question sitting here now, having watched it back twice, would be, do you take away Nick Ball's heart, his Duracell bunny energy, and the fact that punches just seem to bounce off of his chin? What does he have? And I know there's more to him than that, but if you take away those 3 key things with Nick Ball, what sort of fighter are we talking about, if that makes sense? Sam Goodman boxed to a very clear, concise, and effective game plan last night. And you can't really fault his performance. You can't say, Sam Goodman started earlier. If Sam Goodman done this, because like you say, the first round was his worst round. He was competitive in the other.
He's never going to win it on those scorecards, were he? It was like only one of the 3 judges watched the actual fight, and the other 2 scored it.
That's what I was about to say. It's like 2 of them filled it in and then went off backstage to have a drink, and one of them actually sat there watching it. Sam Ball's, I've combined the 2 names. Sam Goodman's stock raised last night. Nick Ball, you're now left asking questions about. We spoke about unifications during the week, didn't we, when we done our prediction with Sam?
Inoue will smash him to pieces if he boxes like that. He'll kick the dog shit out of him. If he boxes like that against Inoue would batter him. He'd absolutely batter him. I believe if Josh Warrington could get back down to featherweight, he would struggle with the likes of Josh Warrington on last night's. But he looked like he gasped for me after about round 6. He had his mouth open. I've never seen that before. I've never seen Nick Ball, and he was reaching with punches. He missed a hell of a lot last night for the first time. He's normally very reserved, doesn't waste a lot, but he seemed to be missing. I wouldn't be surprised if he came out and said he'd got sick. Something seemed off.
Look, we're not saying he didn't win. We're not saying he didn't win the fight. No. We both agree he won the fight,
but not by that margin.
Goodman was more competitive than I was expecting. He gave a very good account of himself. And would I be adverse to seeing Sam Goodman getting another crack at a final eliminator or even world title? Not at all at featherweight. Nick Ball has more questions to answer, and it kind of follows the trajectory of the Dehenny performance. Yes, he got Dehenny out of there in the end, but it wasn't an overly impressive night's work from him. Ronnie Reyes in his maiden defense, that was 4 knockdowns. That was the wrecking ball being the wrecking ball. We've now had 2 performances in a row where he still won, but he's stagnated, if that makes sense. Look, we still love Nick Ball. We're still high on him. We're still going to, back him in there, but be honest with our opinions. But for me, this year, his 2 performances haven't lived up to the high mark he set himself over the 24 months that preceded.
Sorry, I'm going to sneeze, I think. It felt like front foot fighter syndrome. So the second he's not having it all his own way, sort of didn't have a plan B. And just looked out of sorts, I think, would probably best describe that performance last night. It wasn't vintage Nick Ball. Yes, I had him winning the fight. I watched it back. So I had it a draw live. And then when I've watched it back, I gave it 7-5 to Ball. Hand history vault says Ball 184. The swing rounds, it's subjective. So, 1-6, 1-1-2 is probably the worst I would give that, or the widest I would give that. For me, I think Sam Goodman, as David Adelaide has done, is used the card to his advantage and he's fought the fight of his life. Yeah, he won't feel like that this morning on his way back to Australia. He'll be pissed at himself. He'll be gutted because he lost his unbeaten record. But listen, it's the first time he's fought outside of Australia. It's the first time he's fighting up at featherweight. And he just gave the champion one of the hardest fights we've seen Nick Ball in ever. That's one of the hardest fights we've seen Nick Ball in ever. And Nick Ball's fought 2 bloody world champions. Or had 2 world championship fights. I'm talking Ford and Rios. Oh no, because he fought bloody Vargas, as well. So, and I think Sam Goodman could feel aggrieved by those scorecards. I just think they were too wide, and it now on paper, he had an easy night, and it was far from an easy night. But look, what do you think's next for Nick Ball? What do you think's next? They say that the Inouye fight's done in December. I think they might give that second thoughts now. But what are your thoughts on what's next for Mr. Ball?
I hope it's not Inouye. That's the first thing I'm going to say. I do hope that any talk of him getting himself in there with Inouye is tempered, definitely for the time being. I'm not saying we don't want to see it further down the line, but I know it's a funny thing to say. I want to see him in with someone that's naturally from his weight class. So you look, Stephen Fulton, Luis Neri, Espinoza. Those are the fighters in and around him. There's Shushu Carrington, now WBO champion, but I think that is stylistically a nightmare for Nick Ball. Carrington will probably have Nick Ball chasing shadows half the night because he won't stand in front of Nick Ball and allow him to get his work off. I have a feeling we are going to get lumbered with the WBA announcing his mandatory and us getting him having his mandatory. That's what I think is going to happen. But failing that, Luis Neri or Rafael Espinoza would be where I'd like to see him go, because that is 2 competitive fights where we see questions.
Absolutely. I think Espinoza for me is the fight I would favour. But ultimately, I want to see Nick Ball fight at featherweight because he nearly come unstuck against the super bantamweight last night. Sam Goodman, I think, as you said, I think he deserves an eliminator or a big name. over here. Maybe. I know he's Australian, but he announced himself to the world last night, and I think a lot of British fans, certainly myself, I know Sam was really impressed by him. I will be supporting Sam Goodman moving forward because I think he got the shit end of the stick last night. I felt he could have nicked a draw watching it live. I've since watched it again and believe he did lose that fight, but only just. And I think Nick Ball could possibly count himself lucky this morning that Sam Goodman didn't do some of the things he had the opportunity to do. Ball looked very predictable last night. 3 punches, uppercut. 3 punches, uppercut. Getting close, uppercut. Getting close, uppercut. He was leaving himself wide open, but Goodman didn't. Here we go. Sorry, guys, but I highly disagree. Agree. It was competitive very early, but Goodman stopped using his jab after round 4. Goodman got outworked. I had Goodman 3-1 up after 4. I give Ball rounds 5 to 11. Couldn't disagree more. I've scored it 3 times now, and I've had it 1-1-4, 1-1-4. I've had it 1-1-5, 1-1-3, and then when I've fucked around with the swing rounds, I've given it 1-1-6, 1-1-2. I can't give it any wider than that for me, so we just scoring it differently.
I've scored it once, hand history vote, 1-1-5, 1-1-3, and then on my second watch, I didn't score it because I was doing a couple of other things, but it was a close fight.
But I don't believe he won by 7-8 rounds. Absolutely not. No chance, man. No chance. I didn't hear that Espinosa's moving up in weight. No. We might see Espinosa Ford then, maybe, as an eliminator.
That's a good fight as well. We talk about what does Ray Ford do. If he doesn't get Kakachi, Ray Ford Espinosa would be a good fight.
Anyway, moving on. I think I'd said Moses Atama would win this in the first 2 minutes, and I picked it. No, I didn't. Obviously not. Even though I bet he'd win in the first round. So every cloud and all that. Ching ching. Look, I backed Dillian White with my heart, but I'd said as well that my head would say that Moses Atama would win this fight, depending on which Dillian White turned up. And we got the Dillian White that everyone thought would turn up. Yeah, he looked good, so he trained hard. But on the ring walk, holding it back, making them wait, fannying about, then getting in the ring, high-fiving everybody, fist-bumping everybody, fist-bumping Moses, fist-bumping everybody in his team. Dillian White's never done that before. In any of the fights that Dillian White has had, it has been seek and destroy. He don't want to be friends. Very similar to Chisora, he gets himself up for the fight by getting nearly into a fight with his opponent in the build-up. We had none of that this week. I'm also hearing that Dillian White's had a pretty severe knee injury in the build-up to the fight that he's kept under wraps. Whether any of that made a difference or not, we'll never know. But I didn't see anything last night I learned nothing last night about Moses Atama. I learned nothing other than he's better than Dillian White, or this Dillian White. Some people could argue that the first punch that wobbled Dillian White was illegal. It was at the back of the head. But, you're clutching there. You're clutching. You're reaching. Dillian White was ill-prepared for that fight. He should never, ever have gone in there. It was a cash grab. He knew that he would give it a go, but I think Dillian resided himself to the fact that he was probably going to lose this fight. And the first time he got clipped, there was nothing. He had nothing in his legs. And Dillian White has always been able to take a shot. Always been able to take a shot. The first shot that hit him clean wobbled him. What I did like from Moses was he kept cool, calm, and composed. And if you look, he pulls Dillian's hand down before he catches him with the right hook that knocks him over. Very clever. I think he's got a better and higher boxing IQ than I'd possibly given him credit for. But we didn't learn much from him last night.
No, we didn't, mate. From the action we got, we didn't learn. We didn't learn anything new about Moses Atama that we didn't know before 10:25 last night. That's the reality. Now, I will caveat that with saying 3 of his last 4 opponents, Marius Wack, Dempsey McKean, and now White, were supposed to give him rounds. Whack turned up completely out of shape in the fast food restaurants all week. Dempsey McKean was caught with an absolute peach of a right uppercut, and he never recovered. And Dillian White, there's just nothing left with Dillian.
Shot to bits.
Shots to bits.
Let's be honest.
The best shape he's been in for 10 years, undoubtedly, shown by his weight and by the way he looked. But physically getting yourself into shape and then being able to have a fight, we saw there's a difference in that again last night. And there's no shame in it for Dillian White. Look, you can, yes, okay, there's the fact that we couldn't have this fight sanctioned by British Boxing Board of Control, and that's because he's still not allowed to have a British license for reasons to do with the failed drugs test from the AJ rematch, and that's a cloud in itself. The fact that he was meant to fight on the Wardley cards, and everyone's saying, oh, he's pulled off of the Wardley cards because of this fight. That may be part of the reason, but the other reason was on the Thursday of fight week, he was Queensbury were told that White was not getting a license to fight. That was the other reason he was pulled out of that scheduled 6-8 rounder against the undefeated TBA. Moses is a very exciting talent, is special. We don't know where his ceiling is, but we now need to see him go rounds. Alexander Usyk and Moses Atama should not be getting into a box.
He don't deserve that fight. Bollocks, man. What, from beating Dillian White?
Atama doesn't deserve that fight, and Usyk would take, I say great pleasure. He doesn't enjoy beating people up, but he would take pleasure in showing him a boxing masterclass and then afterwards saying, you come to my training camp and I'll help you rebuild. We've seen Usyk done it with Dubois after the first fight, etc. That's the type of fighter he is. I gave a list of 5 fighters earlier that I would believe could take Moses rounds, and maybe we see a bit more. And yes, I know one fighter on this list is rumoured to have a fight with Pulev, and another one we've not seen in a while. I came up with Zhang, Hrgovic, Jermaine Franklin, Murat Gassiev, and Michael Hunter. And I know they're not stellar names, but what we need to see from Moses now
I'll give you my 5 then. Go on, sorry.
Franklin lasted 12 rounds with Dillian White and Anthony Joshua. Yes, I know he's been inactive for a while since through injuries and contractual issues, but the fact remains he's never been stopped. Zhang, yes, we know there's a blueprint to stop him, but he's still a tough fighter. And if Moses went in there and got Zhang out, say, in 6 or 7 rounds, I'd see that as a real statement. Gassiev is an enigma. We know he's a cruiserweight that's come up, but he's done reasonably well at heavyweight, and I believe he's still a threat. And Michael Hunter, okay, we don't know what version of Michael Hunter still exists, but the best of Michael Hunter could ask questions and take Moses to places that we've not seen him to yet. That's where I'm kind of at with him. Yes, there's the Parker fight. Yes, there's the Kabayel fight. Yes, there's the passing of the torch with AJ fight. I'll say this. AJ said that he's staying with Ben Davidson. So if that's happening, we're not seeing that fight because Moses isn't going to move from Ben Davidson either at the time being, is he? So that rules that fight out. I just think we still need to put the brakes on the kid. I'm not saying he needs to go back down to the domestic level or taking on people with more losses than they got wins, but I want to see him go beyond 3 or 4 rounds. Look, if he went in there with 3 of the fighters out of the 5 I just mentioned and blows them all away inside 3 minutes, then you can't deny that he's ready. But you still need to see him in with active fighters that still have a bit of something about them rather than fighters that we know are at the tail end of their career and are looking for a payday a la Dillian White.
I agree. And all 5 of those names would be good fights. I've got a slightly different list. Mine consists of Richard Torres Jr., Michael Hunter, Martin Bakole, Ajagba, and Jermaine Franklin.
Yeah, mate, I agree. I think the Torres Jr. fight, they won't do at the moment because they're both highly ranked with the WBO, and you can see where that could potentially go a bit further down the line. It's not how it should be, but we know how boxing works.
Politics.
I just want to look. One thing I will say is I want to see Moses out again this year, and I want to see Moses out in the UK.
They should have had that last night.
If you give Moses,
stupid man, completely.
Oh, mate, yeah, it should have been the OT. Between the 2 of us, the names we've mentioned, if he does that at the O2 Arena for either of them, you're talking 10, 12,000 easily because Moses Atama is starting to pull in a casual audience. So casuals will buy the tickets. And if you do it with a decent enough Queensbury card, half of the top tier of the O2, close to 15,000 you could do from Moses Talma against one of those 6-7 names between the two of us we've mentioned. I'm very excited by him, but I'm not going to get carried away until I've seen him in with someone that we know still got something left to offer. Dillian Whyte, we hoped we'd ask Moses Talma questions last night, even if we didn't believe it. We always hoped. Those names we've mentioned, we believe can answer Talma questions, and that's the difference, isn't it? The hope and the belief are two very different
and
things.
shall I tell you what I think's next for Dillian Whyte? I think Joshua will fight him now.
Go on. I
think Joshua will fight a shithouse Femi. I hope not. I hope Dillian Whyte, his 30 dogs are however many he's got. He's had a great career. He came from nothing, humble beginnings, street kid from Jamaica and father at 13 or whatever it was. And, he's fought some great names. He's held a version of an interim world title, didn't he? He held the WBC interim at one stage, didn't he? I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah,
for a long time, mate. I had about 4 defenses of that, for God's sake.
He could call himself a world champion of sorts. He's boxed for the belt with Fury. Had a great fight for the British and Commonwealth against Joshua. He's been a big name. Yeah, he's had some dark clouds over his career with failed PED tests and whatnot for whatever reasons. I don't want to see him be a punch bag for anybody. I was gutted last night. I like Dillian. He's, as I say, he got the shit end of the stick because he turned over at a similar time to Joshua, and because he was as good as what he was, he got sort of, I'm not going to say stitched up, but he got the shit end of the stick coming up simultaneously with Joshua. So I would like to hope that Dillian's made enough money to not have to take fights anymore. And I really would like to see him retire. Or if he has to fight again, Chisora 3 in Zimbabwe or something like that, But I'd rather see him sail off into the sunset.
I'd rather he retires, but I would much prefer, out of those two names you've mentioned, Chisora's 50th being Whyte free in a way would feel quite apt. And if Whyte is having issues fighting in Britain, we know Derek wants to do 50 out in Zimbabwe, so that kind of fits that narrative perfectly. What other than us maybe getting the AJ rematch and it being a big British fight, but it's not sanctioned by the border control. That kind of avoids all those potential pitfalls and questions that certain people wouldn't want to have to answer. So, yeah, look, what we expected to happen ended up happening, even if we hoped it wouldn't. And now we play everyone's favourite game of Moses' name gets thrown in the mix with every heavyweight that's ever put on a pair of gloves for a while. And then hopefully a bit of calm and normality regime. And we see, the only other thing to bear in mind is if Usyk is stripped by the WBO, which apparently I think is the belt most likely to strip him if he doesn't take his mandatory, then the interim champion Joseph Parker will fight the number 1 Moses Talma. That is just, if the WBO becomes vacant, we are going to see that fight. And for me, as talented as Moses is, it's still.
I think Parker beats him. I think Parker beats him. I think he needs a Jermaine Franklin, he needs a Hunter. He needs 5-6 tough rounds against somebody that he's banging that it don't go over. As soon as he hit Dillian last night, he took his and it was done. It's not willing to because Dillian was willing to, but some fight fire with fire a little bit. Franklin can take him. To be honest, he would be getting brought in just as an opponent because he hasn't fought for 2 years. But I think he's coming out of his contractual disputes with Dimitri Salita. But look, I'm excited for the future. He's got and he's coming out of his shell as well. He's showing us a bit of his personality as well, which I like also. It was a good night, all in all. It was worth 20 quid, I believe. I know I kicked off about it, but they got my 20 quid, and I'm not complaining about it. A lot of people are moaning, I paid 20 quid for that. No, you didn't. You paid 20 quid for the card. If you're a dickhead that pays 20 quid just to watch a main event, then you're an idiot. You're not a boxing fan. I paid 20 quid to watch it from start to finish, and that's what I did, and I'm all right with that. I enjoyed it, and I'm excited for the future for Moses Otama.
Look, if I wasn't working last night, I would have paid 20 quid for the card as well. So that that's the reality. It was a solid enough card. Yes, it should have been on domestic shores rather than over in Saudi, but
yeah,
it is what it is. It was a solid card. Now let's see. Look, there's matchups you can make for every fighter on the card near enough. Let's see at least half of the card out again this year rather than waiting for the next big Saudi song and dance in February or just before Christmas. Let's get these
get it
fighters
rocking
active.
and rolling. Right, that's Saudi done. So we'll jump in the jet and fly across to Chicago, Illinois. Last night saw the most anticipated middleweight matchup, I think, since Israel Adesanya took on Alex Pereira the first time. It was headlined by Dricus du Plessis defending his middleweight belt for the third time, I want to say. Is it third time? Anyway,
Yes.
against Hamzat Borshimayev. But we'll start at the start of the card, really. This fight went underneath the radar. Drakkar Klose beat Edson Barbosa on points. I didn't even know they were fighting on the card, to be fair. Early prelims.
Nor did I.
Yeah, Drakkar Klose is one of them fighters. He wins 3, loses 1, wins 4, loses 1, wins 3, loses. He's a really good fighter. But Edson Barbosa is past best and has done his best work at featherweight. He's certainly not 155. I don't know what's next for either of them. I think Barbosa will be on the back 9. I think he's 24-13. Drakkar Klose's 16-3-1. Needs to step up now, Klose, because no pun intended, but he's no closer to a world title shot with that win over Edson Barbosa, is he? I'd like to see Drakkar Klose against Shamrock. That is a fight I would like to see. That is a fight I would like to see. My boy Shamrock. If you haven't heard of Shamrock, then where have you been? Have you been living under a rock? Fucking hell, he's full of them tonight. That's 2 puns in less than 2 minutes. Shamrock needs a fight, man. Shamrock needs a fight at 155. And I think Drakkar Klose would be a great test for Shem to see where he's at. Edson Barbosa, I mean, he's probably not going to retire, but he can't be far off now. He really can't be far off. What's your take on the matchup, Liam?
I didn't know it was happening. Saw the result this morning. Went back and watched it. Klose done what you expect him to do with Barbosa being where he's at in his career. Like you say, Shamrock needs an opponent. Klose, whilst not a world beater, would be a fantastic test for where Shamrock is at this point. So let's make that fight happen. That makes sense as a fight on a UFC fight night card, or even as a starter on a prelims pay-per-view card. There's definitely space for that fight. Barbosa, I reckon, will be given one more opportunity to pick up a win, or then we'll be seeing him shown.
Mate, they're not messing around, and I'll tell you what I mean. But I'll back that statement up in a minute. But first fight on the prelims was my. This is twice this has happened to me in 2 fight cards, but this busted my accumulator, and I got every other fight on the nose. Fucking Chase Hooper got absolutely flatlined. I mean, not flatlined. He got stopped by Alexander Hernandez. If anybody doesn't know who Alex Hernandez is, he's the guy that was going to send Cowboy Cerrone yeehawing back to the fucking ranch and got his ass handed to him. But he seems to have matured. He's strong. He's big at 155. And Chase Hooper's been on a bit of a tear. He turned over too early. Had a strong jiu-jitsu base, but couldn't really strike. And last night, he just fought the wrong fight. Stood right in front of Alex Hernandez with his arms wide open and just got binked and went into default mode. Rolled on his back first, then went to his front and yeah. It was a perfect stoppage. It needed stopping. It was right. He was just outgunned last night.
Yeah, mate, he showed all the distress signs you don't want to see from a fighter when they're dropped. The way he turtled up and almost was looking for the octagon to open up so he could just roll out. That's what
of the defeat, wasn't it?
Yeah, look, fantastic combination landed by Hernandez. Fantastic then to keep his foot on the throat and force the referee to make a stoppage. How often do we see it, especially in first rounds of fights? Fighters allow their opponent to recover, allow them to get back into the fight. There was none of that from Hernandez. A good performance from him. Lightweight's an exciting division. We know that top 15 and those fringes are going to have a shake-up by the end of this year. Hernandez could be one win away from putting himself right in that short window.
I'm excited for what's next for him. He's on a bit of a run. And Chase Hooper was on a 5-fight win streak, so he's put paid to that. So he gets the rub of that green, so to speak. Next one for me sees former world champion in the women's strawweight division, Jessica Andrade. She dropped a 3-round decision to Lupe Godinez. If I'm honest, I'd like to see Andrade hang it up now and walk away. She's becoming a bit of a punch bag, really. She's not really that competitive in this. Yeah, I know it was a decision, but she lost nearly every minute of that fight. There was no point in that fight where I was worried for Lupe. What where do you stand on Andrade, Jessica Andrade at this point? I think she should stick to doing OnlyFans.
She's on a free fight slide now after that. 2 decisions and one
didn't.
And obviously the one submission earlier this year on UFC 315. A long time since she's been at her best. A long time since she's been the champ at strawweight. Nothing left to prove. All that's going on at this point is she's ended up further down cards. She's ended up losing to fighters that wouldn't have been fit to lace her gloves up 2 or 3 years ago. It's a shame, but she wasn't competitive. Lupe Hernandez is a limited fighter in her own right, if that makes sense. But where this Jessica Andrade is at this point in her career, she was able to do enough for 15 minutes without ever looking in trouble.
I think didn't Godinez lose to Angela Hill? I think she lost to Angela Hill fairly recently. And no disrespect to Angela Hill, but Angela Hill's a journeywoman, really. She's never going to get a world title shot. I think she came in off the back of Tough, I believe, a long time ago, and she's competitive, but she's just competitive. She's never really put her head above the parapet. So if as you said, Andrade is falling further down the card, she's becoming an opponent, a named opponent as a former world champion, and I don't like to see that. It's all right for 2 or 3 fights, but if it becomes fight on fight, I think she'll potentially get dropped. Because she hit so hard, my fear for her is she's not going to be able to walk away, and we will see her in something like Misfits or BKFC, which is what I don't want to see.
She fits the Misfits profile because of her extracurricular activities, shall we say?
Yeah, but good luck to I do.
Leave it at
I do. When I was talking about the UFC being brutal, Michael Oleksiejczuk flatlined Gerald Meerschaert in the first round. It was a KO/TKO. Meerschaert just hasn't been the same since he got stopped by Hamza. I think he's had a couple of wins, but mostly defeats since he fought Hamza. And as far as I'm aware, he was cut within an hour of losing that fight last night from the UFC. He's been removed from the UFC website, as far as I'm aware. That's shit, man. That is shit. But I mean, look, he's 37-20. Oleksiejczuk is good, and did what he was supposed to do last night. I never thought for 1 minute that Meerschaert would beat him. It's a shit night for Mr. Meerschaert. What's your take on last night's performance?
I mean, you get stopped in the first round is bad enough. To then be cut before you probably even done your post-fight drugs test is
rough, man.
Even more brutal. I mean, it's cutthroat, but it is what the UFC need to do. We've had conversations on and off camera this year about it's not what it was, and we're going to come on to it when we get to the main event. The product isn't booming in the same way it was 2-3 years ago. And am I a fan of seeing people be cut this quickly? I don't want to see it become a
Nope.
regular thing. But when it's needed and when it's necessary, I don't mind seeing it. It's nice.
It's
Dana's
refreshing.
lost his ruthless edge over the last half. It's refreshing to see. If we're going to get this Dana White back that we had, say, if we're about to get 2015 to 2020 Dana White back, I'm all for it because the UFC will become a better place for it again.
Yes. Okay, the next fight saw Bizengo Susakarev. Now, is this the I think he's a stablemate of Hamzat. Is this the kid?
Yes,
At
he is.
middleweight. He
Yeah.
fought Eric Nolan and subbed him in the second round. He'd said he was going to do that. He stood on business, and he looks a really, really good addition to the middleweight division. What's your take on his performance, really, and what do you see for him moving forward, being a stablemate of the champ?
Hey, being the stablemate of the champ means you ride on his coattails and get opportunities on his cards. But unfortunately, Hamzat doesn't fight very often, so he may have to go and forge his own legacy. Impressive performance. Was in control from minute
didn't
one.
he fight 4
and
days ago? Isn't he the kid that fought this week? One of it. There was somebody on the card, and I think he fought this week. Or was that the tough finale that was meant? I don't know. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No. Mate, what I was going to say was how many times, especially in 3-round fights, we see fighters dominate for 5 minutes and then we want to see them go and look for a stoppage or a submission, but they don't because they're scared of the tide being arrested because it's only 15 minutes of work. There was none of that from this guy last night. He went in there, he dominated for 5 minutes. The second round, he started working his ground game, the submission game, and when it came, you could tell it was being built. It wasn't one of those lucky submissions. He'd worked on that from minute one. And when he finally got it halfway through round number 2, it was just rewards. Nolan, unfortunately, overmatched, overpowered, and overwhelmed.
Yeah. But I'm excited to see what's next. The next fight in the flyweight division, I can't believe I got this. I got 11-1 on Tim Elliott, submitting Kaya Sakura. And Tim Elliott did what Tim Elliott has done for a lot of years. He's fought some of the best. He's fought Demetrius Johnson, Ian McCall. He recently got submitted by Mohamed Mokaev, but had Mohamed Mokayev's leg. Didn't he have his leg hyperextended? Was that the fight where Mokaev had his leg caught and didn't tap?
Yeah. And then he couldn't move on it afterwards. So he had to stay on his back. So obviously,
a shocking result for a lot of people because we saw Asakura make his debut. He was the 2-time Rising champion, came over, fought Pantoja. There's no shame in losing to Pantoja, but that was meant to be like, yeah, it was too soon. He's now going to go through the division and rematch Pantoja. Hit a brick wall last night in Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott looked fantastic last night, and I was, yes, I've just said I won money on him, but I would not have been surprised if we'd have seen Tim Elliott get beat and retire last night. He was on the last fight of his deal, and he's now talking about signing another deal. I mean, what's your thoughts on Tim Elliott beating Kaya Sakura?
The one result I probably didn't expect last night and possibly couldn't see a way to happen was Tim Elliott via submission. And that's no disrespect to Tim Elliott. We said it earlier in the week. Look, we'd love him to do it, but we just think he's coming towards the end of his run. And then he goes and does that. And now, even if it's a one-fight deal that rolls on and on, he's guaranteed himself at least one more crack at the big UFC pie, which in these lighter weight divisions, you need the UFC, PFL, Bellator, etc. Yes, they are good, breeding grounds, but down at flyweight, you don't get the same opportunities and exposure unless you're in the UFC. So fair play to Tim Elliott. Flyweight is such a fast fluctuating division. We could see him, ranked and looking towards the title shot with another couple of victories.
Well, look, they were talking about that for Asakura. So as far as I'm concerned, if you beat the man, you get the rope. It's like, playing a cup game at football. Man United are expected to beat Torquay. Torquay beat Man United and they get Arsenal in the next round. So Tim Elliott must get, a fight further up the ladder for him. We know he's capable on his day of mixing it at world level. As I said, he's fought the likes of Ian McCall and Mighty Mouse, who for me is probably the greatest fighter of all time, other than sort of George St. Pierre and people like that. In terms of lightweight and below, I think Demetrius Johnson is probably the GOAT. And Tim Elliott gave him nightmares. So yeah, I'm excited, and I think Tim deserves a new deal, improved terms, and a big fight. Okay, the next fight, Jared Cannonier, the Killer Gorilla, was outpointed over 3 rounds by Michael Venom Page. Now, I'd said going into this fight that I expected it to be a point scoring exercise by Michael Venom Page, but what I was impressed by last night was Michael Venom Page's takedown defense, his offensive grappling, his ability to... He reminded me very much of Leon Edwards last night. So when he did get taken down, it wasn't an issue. He butt scooted, got his back to the wall, so to speak, the cage wall, worked his way back up to his feet, and was managing to get overhooks or underhooks and keep enough pressure on Jared Cannonier so that Cannonier wasn't allowed to get any punches off, and made it look fairly comfortable. And I was worried for him because I didn't think he was big enough at middleweight. But look, he's just fought one of the bigger middleweights and was fairly comfortable. What's your thoughts on it, man?
Well, we both were worried, brother, weren't we? And we both said it in the week that we had a horrible fear that Cannonier was just going to use his size, not do a lot, but be effective enough to completely nullify MVP and get the win. Instead, how much fun did Michael Venom Page have in there last night? He was having... The Michael Venom Page, sorry, mate, that we've not seen for a couple of years was back last night. He was showboating. He was pointing to the corner. He was pointing to Dana and the commentary team. He was having a great time in there, but he also backs it up with a performance. That is the best MVP performance we've seen in the UFC at a time where there's question marks over whether he could do it at middleweight. And now I just want to see him fight again. There's no reason why he can't fight in Abu Dhabi on the Aspinall Gan card, or in December on the card that looks like it's going to be
Prates at 170. If he can make 170, then do it. I actually thought that the MVP edged Ian Gary. If I'm honest, I thought he won that fight. I think welterweight is a better division for him. I think middleweight he will struggle. He's not beating Hamzat. I don't think he beats Dricus. So he's not going to fight Izzy, the friends, unless he got a massive payday, which I don't believe they justify. So yeah, I'd like to see him fight Prates in October in Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah, I think Prates is the way. I think as much as he's saying he wants to be active at middleweight, I mean, you can't put in a performance like he did last night and then say, oh, actually, I'm done with this division. He kind of had to say he believes he can make a dent at middleweight, but the reality is, where Cannonier is a big guy with limitations, the likes of Izzy, Dricus, Hamzat, even throw Rob Whittaker into the conversation.
Imavov.
Big and more skilled, and that is where MVP is going to come unstuck at 185. If you can make Prates down at 170, I'm all for
it. And that was a great segue. Thank you very much, Liam. It looks like you've done this before. Carlos Prates with the first of 2 spinning elbows or spinning forearms, but spinning back shit, knocked out Jeff Neal last night, and the fight wasn't going his way up to that point. Really, it was fairly even. Until it wasn't, and then he just threw a spinning elbow. It landed, and that was all she wrote. Within 5 minutes, he was smoking a cigarette at the post-fight press conference. The guy is fucking mad. It reminds me of what's his name? The guy that slapped Shane Mosley's wife's ass. You know what I'm on about, don't you?
Oh, yes.
Doesn't it begin with M?
Yeah.
Fuck is his name? I'll find it now.
But no, mate, it was... Look, we say all the time in the UFC that you could... And I know it happens in boxing as well, but these moments in the UFC, because you've got more you can use and you can throw elbows, etc., you can get moments like last night, and it was...
Ricardo Mayorga.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Dear. Look, we're not saying he wasn't going to be able to turn the tide itself. It was still early enough in the fight that he could have come back and won. But Jeff Neal is a confidence fighter. We said it before. If Jeff Neal's allowed to get up ahead of steam and start having success, then Jeff Neal can set himself at that pace and win a fight quite comfortably over 15 minutes. It was just starting to show the signs of Neal getting into that sort of rhythm, wasn't it? And then this elbow comes out of nowhere. He is flatlined. And like you say, Prasos is out the back having a smoke, saying to Dana, "Come on, when am I fighting next?" It's fantastic. Bad as a box of frogs, but I'm all for it.
Okay, co-main event. The Miracle Man Lerone Murphy with the second spinning back shit of the night. Under pressure a little bit, took a few shots, but was comfortable. And then it was a scary knockout. Aaron Pico was unconscious for 5 or 6 minutes, man. And the hype leading into this fight, I think Lerone was the underdog in this fight and proved that he is worthy, more than worthy. In fact, the champ called him out. Lerone Murphy just dealing with Aaron Pico. Now, is this how good Lerone Murphy is, or is this how there are levels to this and Bellator? Because look, Patchy Mix, Patricio Pitbull are two names that are fresh, that have come across with a lot of hype and just got beat, but not like this. Aaron Pico, I mean, we've seen this happen to him before. I think it happened in his debut, didn't it? He got knocked out in his debut against that guy that was 5-2. He's meant to have improved, but I didn't see anything last night that makes me think he'll do anything in the featherweight division in the UFC. What's your take on the Miracle Man knocking out Aaron Pico in 3 minutes of the first round?
Look, Lerone Murphy has been impressing without getting that moment that gets everyone talking, that sort of, oh shit, this guy may be the real deal. You know what I'm talking about. And we got that from Lerone last night. Pico, I mean, to come into the UFC and be given someone on the rise like Lerone Murphy for your debut is incredibly tough matchmaking. But Lerone Murphy's been threatening to do this for a while. He's been delivering performance after performance, and he just hasn't got the big moment. That was his moment last night. If Dana said to him beforehand, you deliver a big moment here, you're fighting Volk in December. Well, he's just gone and done it, hasn't he? He's just given that big moment. We've been, we're high on Lerone Murphy as Brits. He doesn't get as much backing as maybe he should do from the Americans for the reasons we've just highlighted. But that was impressive from Lerone Murphy last night. And if he is going to fight Volk, I'm excited for it.
Look, Lerone, that couldn't have gone any better last night because I mean I'm a Lerone fan. We share a surname. I'm hoping that I'm going to check my lineage and we're related somewhere down the line. We're both Murphys. We're from the Northwest. We're both brown. Surely that's enough. We're practically brothers. But no, I think, and I mean this with the utmost respect, Lerone Murphy's very vanilla on the microphone, and I think that's the problem. He doesn't shit talk. He doesn't get into scrapes. He just goes out there, does his job. Very tactical. So not the most exciting fighter to watch in terms of he's just clever at what he does, so he never puts himself in any danger. And I don't mean that he's scared to do that, but why would you put yourself in danger if you don't need to? But he needed that last night because last night announced Lerone Murphy to people who didn't necessarily either believe the hype was real or didn't even know who he was. He fucking come out. When I talk about putting your head above the parapet, he fucking jumped up, landed on the top and said, I'm the fucking man. That's what he did last night. And to do that as the underdog on a co-main event of a pay-per-view card, the biggest card of the year, you were on the beach 2 weeks ago. Remember, he took this fight at short notice. Pico was meant to fight Imavov, who would have done something very fucking similar, I believe. Was it Imavov? No, Evloev, sorry. Evloev. Imavov's middleweight into that's who stopped Izzy last. I'm over the moon because X was blowing up and Elon, just fucking change it back to Twitter for God's sake. Because we still say people tweet stuff out. You don't say people X'd stuff out. You
X
say
stuff
tweet,
out. No,
just rebrand it back to what it was. But on the broadcast, Volkanovski tweeted the broadcast and said, "I will see you in Perth." I think it is. So he's rubber stamped him deserving of a world title shot, and I am so happy for him. But I don't know what's next for Aaron Pico. Is it the Pitbull fight?
should be Pitbull for Pete. I would have rather we saw Pico Pitbull for Pico's debut rather than him being handed to such an up and coming fighter. I tell you what, I am glad about, and this isn't Brit biased at all. We've been struggling to come up with a new challenger, haven't we, for Volk after he beat Lopez and picks up the belt? Well, you've got one now, a young, hungry fighter, the type of fighter that Volk himself thrives off of fighting. If we're seeing that later this year,
absolutely. Well, Volk wants it. Lerone obviously wants it. It's a ready-made fight because who else is deserving of a featherweight? There's nobody else. There's nobody else. What, you're going to do the winner of flipping Aljo and who's he fighting next? Aljo has a fight, I believe. Anyway, look, he's the most deserving of the fight. He rubber stamped that last night. I think it blew up in the UFC's face. I really think that they thought that Pico was going to beat Murphy. I think that they thought Lerone Murphy was going to lose last night. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. Aljo's
Brian Ortega.
There you go. So yeah, look, it did blow up a bit in the UFC's face last night because we know they were high on Pico. Dana's had his eye on him for a while. However, Dana's also been high on Lerone Murphy. So the other side of me is thinking, okay, so he's done this fight for a reason. Whoever wins it, it's the fight he likes. He's going to step forward. We're just lucky as Brits that we're going to get to see a Brit go. Could have 2 British UFC champions by the end of this year, which would be incredible.
Roll on UFC Manchester.
English, sorry, not British.
Roll
English
on
as it is
UFC
in the UFC.
Manchester 2026. Well, we could see Paddy, or it could be at Anfield. We could see Paddy. We could see Tom and Lerone. Okay, the main event. I've watched it 4 times, and a lot of people are online saying it was boring, but Dricus du Plessis is no longer the UFC's middleweight champion. He was dog-walked, literally. He was crucified twice. Twice. Khamzat Chimaev just mauled him. Absolutely mauled him. There's about a 15-second spurt in the last round where it looked for a split second that Dricus had hurt him with an uppercut and got him on his back. And then Khamzat is just too strong. He's just too strong. I don't see anybody beating him. The guy who I thought could beat him, he fucking ragdolled last night. I mean, what more can we say about Khamzat Chimaev that hasn't already been said?
The way that we probably least wanted the fight to go in terms of we knew it would go 25 minutes if this happened is what we got last night. Look, I'm the same as you. I've watched it 3 times. I appreciate the groundwork. I appreciate everything Khamzat done last night. But on the flip side, when you want to attract new people to the sport, when you want to, you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
That 25 minutes is not the way to do it.
No.
But on the Dricus du Plessis, he just had no answer. And we've known Khamzat Chimaev is high level, has the potential to do this to everyone, to anyone. He showed it last night. Dricus du Plessis, who has an answer for everything, had no answer last night. Yes, he had that moment in the last 30 seconds, but it was nothing. By that point, if Khamzat was really that worried, he would have been able to do something about it. He knew that although it looked visually like the champion had a moment in the fight, he was still in control, and the scorecards reflected it. The UFC now has a 175 and a 185 champion that unfortunately isn't going to sell many tickets or attract many eyeballs, which is a shame. But you can't not appreciate Khamzat Chimaev. The only thing I will say is middleweight is a fantastic division. A lot of great matchups to be made. Khamzat needs to be more active.
Yeah.
or we're going to end up with what I think will happen is we will probably end up with an interim title fight in this middleweight division before Hamzat makes his first defense.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think Imavov will fight Derrida for the interim. I actually thought Derrida would fight Hamzat, but Hamzat won't fight again this year. We might see him first quarter of next year. I thought Hamzat might retire last night. Doesn't need the money.
We said this, didn't we, during the week?
Yeah, he's got the title. I still, excuse me, wouldn't be surprised if he does retire. Remember, this guy fought long COVID, had to pull out of 2 fights through illness. He's had issues with his visa. He's climbed to the top of the mountain now. He dog walks Reiner Derrida. I think he does that to pretty much.
I don't see anyone that beats him at middleweight, mate.
Dricus was the only one that I thought would beat him.
Yeah.
With him being so unorthodox. Everybody else within the middleweight division is fairly orthodox in what they do. Derrida is a striker that's got wrestling and grappling, but not enough to trouble Hamzat. I mean, did you see what I did to DC? He swung him round like I've done that with my children. DC's like 300 bloody pounds now. Yeah, I want to see Hamzat back out there. It should be Imavov, I think, next, or Derrida. Don't think we'll see that. I think we've got more chance of seeing Dricus fight one of those two.
I think Dricus against Derrida for an interim is probably more likely.
Yeah, but look, it was a fitting end to a great card. It was quick. The card, the placement was. It just went bam, 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 bam. Me and Sam were shocked at how quick it went, even though it was 3 hours. It went really quick. The placement was really good. There wasn't much filler. There was some great fights. There was knockouts of the year performance. I think Lerone Murphy got performance of the night. Well done, Lerone. 50 G's, baby. And there's some interesting matchups to come off the back of that. For me, Saturday, last Saturday was one of the better nights we've had of the year in terms of boxing and MMA. Yeah, it was a great night for me. What are your parting thoughts, Liam, on the night as a whole?
One of the best nights we've had with fight sports this year, I think, isn't it? And it's not an exaggeration to say that. We've maybe had great fights, but we've not had great nights. Lots of fights to be made now across both boxing and UFC. It was a good night. It was a good night, and that was a much needed, just finishing on the UFC, that was a much needed shot in the arm for the UFC because their pay-per-views haven't really delivered this year. And okay, the main event to a lot of people wasn't their cup of tea. It stank the arena out in some people's opinions, not an opinion I know we won't agree with. But we have a new champion. It's Hamzat Chimaev. My biggest fear now is that 185 becomes stagnated because we don't see him fight often enough. So that is not to end on a sour note, but the evidence is there with Hamzat. Yes, long COVID, etc. aside, but we know he has visa issues. We know he says he's going to fight on certain dates and then changes his mind on the drop of the hat. Dana has admitted that in interviews more than once. I just worry for the state of 185 with Hamzat as champion, unfortunately, as impressive as he was last night.
I agree, and I'm hoping that the UFC put things on the table and sort of warn him that, look, you've got 6 months or we'll strip you.
Yep.
And he doesn't get any special dispensation because the fans deserve it. But look, again, I'll reiterate what you said. I think it was one of the better nights of the year that we've had for fight sports, and I was very satisfied. There's a lot of nights we've done watch-alongs and I've sort of been underwhelmed, and that last night wasn't one of them. So thank you for everyone that's joined interacting. Mad Mitch, Derek, Hand History Vault, Jams, Mr. Neutral. Thank you everybody that's joined, interacted, commented. Please follow at LTs Sweet Boxing Science. Liam does Liam's Fight Night picks over there. He does predictions, shorts, etc. Jay's Fight Talk is very similar. We do straight talk over on there. You can catch us on SW Fight Up on Tuesday for an overview of last night's action with episode 45, I think it is, of No Punches Pulled. So yeah, once again, thank you everybody for joining us. Liam, appreciate you, man. Thank you for joining me.
Cheers,
It's been
brother.
an absolute pleasure as always. Most importantly, guys, keep punching. See you soon. Bye-bye.